And I've learned that even though I'm a, quote, stay-at-home mom, I'm allowed to have other things too. I'm allowed to do those other things that, feed my soul and kind of get me going. And they ultimately do make me a better mom.
Hey there, Mama. Welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. I'm Kirsten Tyrell, and I am the host of this awesome podcast where I get to sit down with moms from all over the world from various walks of life to share their stories of inspiration, knowledge, and all kinds of good stuff to remind you what a truly marvelous mom you are. So sit back and relax, or plug your headphones in and keep doing whatever you're doing, and enjoy today's episode of the Marvelous Moms Club. Hey, Marvelous Moms. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so excited today because I'm sharing a guest who has so much to offer that I think we're going to have to try not to be on here for a few hours because you've got some stories to share and I'm excited to share them. This is Rochelle Bohannon. I actually know her from a couple different places. We're in a couple different Facebook groups, masterminds, whatever you want to call them, together, learning the whole life of online business and motherhood all at the same time. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's so fun to have you. And Rochelle was just saying this is her first podcast interview of probably many because you just published a book. So you're gonna be hustling. So this is the first link in your chain.
Yes, definitely. It's exciting.
It is super exciting. Okay, so tell everybody first of all how many kids you have and what your mommy situation looks like.
I have an almost 2-year-old son and another one due any day now. We're just kind of in the last couple weeks of waiting mode. So
that's awesome. Are you having another boy?
We don't know. We waited with our first, and it's a mystery, and I'm really excited to find out.
I bet you are. What is your inclination?
With my son, it was very definitively a boy, and with this one, I've been kind of flopping back and forth, but lately I've been thinking boy, so I don't know. We'll see. It's hard to guess.
By the time this airs, we'll be able to say which one it was probably. So
yeah, hopefully.
I get to be curious, and you've had to be curious forever, but everybody listening will probably just get to know. So congratulations to you guys listening. You're basically like future tellers. So that's amazing. So let's kind of jump into your story because you tell everybody the title of your book that you just barely put out.
Yeah, it's called Mystery Illness, and it's how to gain clarity, feel empowered, and advocate for your best life. It's basically it starts with my story of I was in my late teens and I had sort of a mysterious illness. And it kind of starts with that story, and then it kind of goes into all the things that I've learned from that, both mentally, physically, spiritually. It's not really about solving an illness. It's about navigating it mindfully so that you can ultimately solve it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I feel like that applies whether you have like a medical issue or not, because I feel like, isn't that kind of the point of life? Like navigating through,
Totally.
It's never going to be smooth sailing, or if it is, it's kind of a short period of time.
Totally. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of the feedback I'm getting is like, this could be applied to everything. So I'm kind of working on how to spin it into other titles that might speak to more people, a bigger audience, and ultimately reach more people, because a lot of it is, like you said, it's like everyday stuff or just big life things that happen. And it's, definitely.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit about the illness and kind of how it dictated your life and how you did navigate it. Just kind of give us like the Cliff's Notes version without telling the whole story.
Yeah, it's hard. In the book, it's like goes into detail, and it's like pages and pages, and I'm like, this is the whole thing. So, but the Cliff's Notes version, it kind of came out of nowhere. I just started having these attacks where I would have intense abdominal pain and vomiting continuously for hours and hours.
Oh my gosh.
And I'd have to end up in the emergency room and get a bunch of meds and everything. And these attacks happened really frequently. I mean, there was a point that they were happening like every couple weeks. It was at least once a month, maybe every 2 months.
Wow.
And I wasn't really intentional about it then. I kind of just, in between the attacks, I tried to just pretend like everything was fine. I wanted so badly to be normal, but at the time, or now looking back, at the time I was wanting something that didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super grateful that I'm not normal because I learned a lot about it. It took me about 5 or 6 years to really start using it proactively. And I ended up, I saw tons and I can't even tell you how many doctors I've seen, but I was able to find a doctor that was able to work with me to get me off a bunch of the medications and to kind of get me on a path medically. But then I also took charge of my life, physically and emotionally and all that. And I just made it a really big deal for myself to get better.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did that, as soon as my mindset shifted in a way that felt like it was purposeful, I felt like I started feeling healthy.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a mind thing too.
Okay, I want to talk about that for a minute because I feel like this is a concept that so many of us hear. Sometimes, depending on where you are at in your progression or understanding, it sounds so hokey. And even when you've used it and you've seen the benefits of it, sometimes it's hard to stick to. Sometimes it's like,
Totally.
oh my gosh, affirmations, positivity, purposeful.
Totally.
It's so hard to stick to, even though you know it's like a diet. You know how good it makes you feel, but
Oh yeah.
it still seems easier to do it the lazy way. And
Yep.
it's just so funny when you start opening yourself up to that. You start seeing how it applies to everything. I mean, healthy eating, to talk about diets, just affirming that you are healthy, and those things just seem to fall into place. It's almost like magic.
Totally.
But it's such a powerful tool that it's so amazing when you hear somebody really learned it and saw it work for them.
Yeah, and it is. And it wasn't an overnight thing for me. It was definitely a progression. And it was kind of
Yeah.
like all of a sudden I realized, oh, I haven't been sick in 4, 5, 6 months, and I'm doing this and this and this and this. And these are things that I never would have done before. And
Yeah.
I'm going out to dinner and not having anxiety about food anymore. And it was
Oh,
just, and as soon as I would have these little awakenings, it was just more fuel to keep going and to do more and to be more mindful and intentional and purposeful and everything that I did. So it was really cool to see it kind of happen gradually like that, and to look back on it and be like, oh wow, it's crazy to think where I started and now where I'm at now, and to think about where I'm going to go in the future because of it. So
yeah. So the illness and everything kind of affected whether or not you thought you'd be able to conceive naturally.
yeah, I mean, I was in my late teens, early 20s, so I wasn't super focused on kids at the time, but I remember toward the end just thinking, if I'm like that, if this is my future, then there's no way that I can have kids. There's no way that I can carry a child or raise a family or be a
Yeah.
mom in any way. And so it freaked me out because it was my biggest dream to have kids in whatever capacity that meant for me. So that was kind of a big driving force in getting better too, just because I was getting to that point where I was like, okay, I need to start thinking about my future, and I wanted it to be different than it was, so that I could have
Yeah.
kids and become a mom. And I'm super grateful that I'm able to do that today.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that you have been able to do that.
Yeah, it's the best gift in the whole world. So
And like you're telling me before we started recording, sometimes when you're not sure and you don't know if it's going to be something you're going to be able to be blessed with, when you are, it means even more. I mean,
oh yeah,
I don't feel like those of us who get pregnant on the first try don't appreciate parenting, but it's a deeper gratification, I think, a deeper gratitude for that blessing.
definitely.
Which is awesome. And oh my gosh, I can't wait to find out what you're having. Now it's going
I
to spin
know.
around in my head. I don't have the patience. I guess your illness probably taught you a lot of patience because
Yeah, I never thought I'd be able to do it. And then when we had our first, my husband was on board. And so now I don't know any different. So I think
Yeah.
no matter, we'll have more kids and we'll keep doing it. So
I think it's so fun.
the end surprise when they come into the world is pretty cool. So
I bet. Yeah, I'll have to
Yeah.
remember that. If I have more kids, maybe we'll see how much self-discipline and patience I can have.
It
Because
does
I've
take
had
a
one
lot.
of each. I can justify it now. I've had one
A
of
lot of
each.
people do that on their third.
Yeah.
Once they have a couple and they really don't care. It's just kind of a fun way to mix it up at the end.
So true.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a juggler like me. You totally understand the hustle of trying to manage more than one thing at
Yes.
once. So aside from being a mom and growing a baby still in your tummy, and putting out this book, which is so awesome because you're sharing your journey with other people who can benefit from it and learn from it.
Yeah.
What else do you have going on? And let's get into some of your tips and tricks that you can share with the rest of us.
Yeah, so I guess toward the end of last year, my husband and I kind of had this awakening about things we wanted to do, and like all these things that we felt like were possible. And my book was one of them. And I started writing it in January of this year, and I found out really soon after that I was pregnant. And so my goal was to publish it before I had the baby. So I feel pretty good about that. But
Yeah.
so we also do some Amazon FBA stuff.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
And have some other little things. It's crazy, it's fun, it's like exciting, so those are our main things. And I stay at home with our son, and we have family in the area, but we don't have a lot of family that helps regularly because they're busy, and everybody's got stuff going on. So,
Yeah.
it's been a huge learning curve to juggle it all and to feel like you're being a good mom and a good wife and a good, and good to yourself too.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that I've learned, is, taking care of myself allows me to be so much better in all areas. And that's not something that I ever really thought about before having kids. So,
yeah. I know. Isn't that backwards? Like we just assume like, it's so funny how sometimes it takes having kids to realize, oh, I actually do need to kind of take care of myself. So I have something to offer them, where you just thought it would kind of be this natural like sacrifice, which you do make, but you realize that part of the sacrifice comes from taking the time to keep nurturing yourself and keep strengthening yourself so that you aren't just, I don't know, completely drained of your whole identity by the time you're done raising kids.
Totally.
Too,
yeah. And I was in such a kind of like a funk toward the end of last year. And as soon as I realized what kind of a book I wanted to write and where I wanted to go with it, as soon as I started feeding that part of me, I felt like I became so much more alive than I already was. And I didn't even know that was possible because I felt like I was on such a good path. But then once I really that clicked and I felt like I was really giving myself what I needed, it was kind of amazing to feel good. Even my first trimester of pregnancy, when I was exhausted and everything, I was just so invigorated and so excited about it all. So
yeah, you're speaking my love language.
Yeah, and not to say it's not stressful. I mean, there were times where I was like, but in the big picture of it all, I wouldn't take it down a notch at all, because I'm definitely, like I said, I'm feeling really invigorated and just excited about it all.
Good. So speaking of invigorated, tell everybody what time you get up in the morning and what your day kind of looks like. Because I'm just going to let you tell them. I read it. I know what time you wake up. So tell everybody else.
Yeah, my son's an early riser. I've always been an early person. I love mornings. My son takes after me. So that means I have to get up early, which I love early mornings. So I try to get up around 5. Sometimes it's a little later than that. But he's usually about 6:30, but some mornings he pops up at 6, and sometimes I get till 7:30. So it's really hit or miss with him. But I at least give myself an hour before he wakes up to write or work on my website or blog posts or whatever. And my husband wakes up too, so I help him with our FBA stuff and whatnot, and we kind of that's the time to do our thing. And
so you do a lot of that work in the morning, whereas some people kind of do it at night, but morning works for you guys.
Totally. I'm so much more sharp in the morning. I'm happier. I've always been that way, so it just works for me. But I've tried it at night, but at night I'm just mush. It's bad.
That's how Ben is. Ben's like, I'll get up at 4:30 if I have to, but I'm not gonna stay up until midnight. And I'm like, let's get this done. It's only 10.
No, there was a period in January, early this year, when my son was super off and waking up at 5:30, and I would get up at 4:30 because that was my time. And if I had mornings where I didn't do that, I just felt off. And
I understand that. It's amazing what you can conquer just getting ahead of the day instead of letting the day get ahead of you. You know what I mean? I remember even back when Ben still had a job and we weren't doing full-time entrepreneur life, and we just kind of had to, we'd get up at 5:00 and our kids were up. I didn't even get an hour. It was usually half an hour because they'd sense my energy that I was awake.
They do. Yes. My son, when I walk by his door, he feels it. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, it didn't even happen with Ben. He could get up, and if I stayed in bed, the kids stayed in bed. But if I got up, it made me so angry. But even still, having the kids up, getting our day started, and having the whole house clean and having everything done before Ben even left for work was so amazing, because then it's you're like, oh my gosh, the day's just beginning for most people. Or you end up at the store to buy something and you're like, wait, it's only 7:30. They're not going to be open for another another hour and a half. What am I going to do? Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, for me, even something even if in my first trimester I was exhausted and there were days that I could barely just get up earlier, but even if it was just 5 or 10 minutes just to get dressed and brush my teeth, that made me feel like I was at least half of a human being and I could carry on with my day. So
yeah, I understand that. And I think it's awesome that you were able to do the book before baby number 2 came, because life's obviously going to get a little bit busier and the routine will change. And it's great you have it out there, because I feel like the creation is fun of a new project or of a new business, but what's even more fun for me is when it's done and you just get to share it and you get to promote it
Yeah.
and you don't have to start from scratch again.
Absolutely. It's definitely weird because you're building up to this like big thing and
Yeah.
then you're like, okay, now what do I do? And I'm just trying to remind myself I'm having a baby, so I need to just be gentle. And that's another thing
Yeah.
that I've learned in this whole past year or so is just to be really gentle with myself and to just be really fired up about things, but not so fired up that I beat myself up when things don't happen in the way that I hoped or wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another big thing that I've learned is to be gentle with myself a little bit more, which is hard. It's hard
It
for
is
me
hard.
to do that.
It is hard, but you're building up to a really big thing in a couple more weeks too.
Yeah, exactly.
You're still building up to a pretty grand moment, which
Definitely
is so important. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love talking to like-minded people who kind of understand the hustle, who are trying to balance all those things. So talk to everybody a little bit like about that self-care and understanding. I mean, we know that you do it. We know you understand it, but what are some things that you can recommend to moms who are or aren't running businesses, who are just trying to tackle it all? Because I think it gets busier the older your kids get, but even just having the toddler and the baby phase can be so taxing. So aside from getting up early, what are some of your other like secret weapons?
For me, I've learned physical like exercise is my big thing. I joined a gym. I have kids care, and for an hour a day, most days, that's my thing. And at first I always felt guilty about it, but now it's like I don't feel guilty because that's my time and they have fun. My son has a great time. So just, investing in yourself, physically and, we eat really well and everything and just taking care, whatever works for you. I mean, everybody has whatever they do and that works for them. And that's something that's kind of we don't really skimp on that.
Mm-hmm.
Even on days where I'm exhausted, I still go to the gym. Most days, but there's definitely days where I'm like, no. But,
some days you're human like the rest of us. Some days you get to be a little bit
yeah, exactly. But, for the most part, we have our little routine that we do and it works. And I don't really mess with it because if I mess with it too much, then I start feeling kind of blah. So I definitely make it a priority.
That's good.
In that sense. What else? I definitely... learning to ask for help has been a big thing for me.
I love it.
I'm big on doing it all myself, and I just want to do everything and, protect people and just do my thing and whatever. And it's really hard for me to accept help, but just accepting little bits of help here and there has been huge. We have a babysitter that comes once a week, and I always feel guilty leaving, but then it's like my son has fun and I get some work done for a few hours and I come home and we have an even better afternoon. So, but just accepting help from my husband even or family members and stuff like that. Like I've definitely learned how to do that a lot better.
Yeah.
Since taking all this on, because there was a point where I was like, I realized I can't do it all by myself. It's just not possible. I'm not going to be sane. I'm not going to be healthy. I'm not going to be happy if I don't, take little bits of help here and there. Mm-hmm. I still like to do everything myself, but.
Right. I mean, a lot of us do.
Yeah.
And we know that we can do it the right way, but it's amazing how much. And I mean, like, you're not a hardcore entrepreneur. Like you're a mompreneur. We can't be like, we just can't be at that level sometimes. But I think
there'll be a time and a place for all that.
Yeah.
And this phase of life with two little ones, definitely.
And that's when you outsource what you can. Like I was just talking to my friend the other day about, we were trying to figure out like with her business, who she needed to hire, what type of person she needed to hire to kind of duplicate her information that she had, her style, her writing, whatever. And then towards the end of the conversation, it kind of came around to, well, maybe she just needed like a domestic helper. Maybe she needed somebody to come and clean her house or to run her errands or to pick out her kids' clothes, because that time is not taking away from her time with her kids, but it's taking away time from work. And maybe she's at a point where only she can do what she needs to do. So so kind of like getting the babysitter, you're not even taking time away from like your one-on-one time. Your son probably gets plenty of time with you. Yeah. It's almost a break. My kids always appreciate a break from me just as much as I appreciate one from them. So
absolutely.
You do what you
Yeah,
have to do.
there are days when he gets sick of me and I'm like, you need
Yeah,
to hang out with someone else because
right.
you're over it right now. So
You're
it's,
over mom. Let's
yeah,
find someone
at
to
the end of the
hang out
day,
with.
it's better for him to be comfortable with other people. It's just, I
Yeah.
just want to soak it all in, but I can't. And I've learned that even though I'm a, quote, stay-at-home mom,
Mm-hmm.
I'm allowed to have other things too. I'm
Yeah.
allowed to do those other things that, feed my soul and kind of get me going. And they ultimately do make me a better mom. Since
Yeah.
accepting those things and actually acting on them, I've been happier and I'm much more present and just with him.
Yeah.
And I'm still with him most of the day anyway. So
Right. You're like, we're talking a few hours a week, people.
exactly. And nap times are like when I you know, do a bunch of, I'm like frantic all around the house doing things or just, usually I'm just at my computer or whatever. But
Yeah.
so I have time to work on things. So
Yeah.
it's good.
I feel like kind of you nailed it on the head when you said you've realized that it's okay to do other things, because don't you feel like a lot of us when we become moms, we feel like, hey, this is my title for the next 18 years or 25 years or whatever. And then you have this little awareness that you're capable. You can do more than one thing if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. And I think that leads to a lot of satisfaction and just continuing to grow and learn. We've kind of talked about that. But for you, when did you kind of realize, or when did you decide, what was kind of your entrepreneur journey too? Like, I know you've written this book. Had you been writing before? Have you blogged? Have you had any kind of online work?
I've always been a writer. Before I had my son, I was, doing a lot of content writing and not so much my own writing. I started a little blog, but I had no idea where I wanted to go with it. So it kind of fizzled out because I had no direction. I had no purpose. But writing has always been my outlet. Like it's been ever since I can remember. It's been my therapy. It's been my, creative outlet and everything. So, and my husband's always been telling, it's ever since I met him, he's been telling me, you're going to write a book, you're going to write a book. And I had no idea what I was going to write about. And it literally just came to me. I was driving, which is when a lot of things come to me. But, and I knew I needed to write a book. I just didn't know I didn't know what I wanted to say or how I wanted to say it or whatever. And it just literally came to me, and I called him and I was like, this is the book I'm going to write. This is what it's going to do. And this is what I want to help people with. I wanted to ultimately just use my experience and my story to reach people, because it would have been really nice if I would have had that when I was in that situation or in a similar situation. So that was like definitely an aha moment for me. And since then, it's like they just keep happening, because it's like I feel like once it clicks, it's just like there's so many directions you want to go into, and I have so many notes in my phone, and just it's crazy and it's overwhelming, and I just want to do all the things, and I will, but you got to do one at a time. So
one at a time, yeah, that's a lesson that I'm learning very much. So
yeah, but it was definitely around the same time that both my husband and I were having that kind of epiphany about the direction that we wanted to go with things and the kinds of things that we ultimately wanted to do with our lives and our businesses and everything. So it just kind of snowballed from there, which is really cool.
You know what I love too about your story is, and this is probably like so obvious to everyone else, but I feel like I've really honed in on the theme with entrepreneurship, and it's you solve your own need and then you try and help other people solve their need. Totally. And I've been talking about this a lot. Like I've just kind of noticed that trend lately in my guests or just my mompreneurs is you don't necessarily set out, like you didn't sit there and be like, you know what, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to launch a book, and I'm going to base this. Some people do. Yeah. But I feel like it's more sharing your personal experience, trying to help people. Yeah. And that turns into a business. And then that can lead to so many other opportunities for yourself, for other people. I mean, I didn't start this podcast to be a business. I started it to share stories because I had a need that I had figured out. I had learned how to take care of myself, and that I was capable of doing more than one thing, and that I deserved to do that. And there's so many reasons I started this podcast, but those are some of them. And now it's turned into something that's opened so many doors, but I never would have planned that when I started it.
And that's the whole thing is like, I could speculate about where everything's going to go, but at the end of the day, it's just going to kind of take its own journey, and I'm just kind of along for the ride. And it's exciting to just reach people and connect with people. And like you said, connect with like-minded people and people that, are in a similar situation than I was, And that I've always said since starting to write the book, if I can just help one person with one aspect of their life, then it's a success. Then the entire thing was worth it. So
yeah, you're like totally my twin mind. That's what I said when I started this. I was like,
really?
if I can just help one mom, then I'm fine. I will have done my job. I don't care about
really
the numbers.
What it's about. Yeah, it's really just about being there for people and connecting with them. And there's always somebody out there that needs you in some way. And it's about reaching those people and kind of seeing where it goes from there. And it's just such a cool feeling to know that you're like touching people and you can, you can actually be helpful in some way, especially when it's from a bad experience or from a place of frustration or fear or hurt or something like that. So it's a cool feeling to know that you're impacting somebody in that way.
It is. And like on a totally different business note, that's how it is for us with Amazon. Like, we figured it out. We were totally doubtful. We figured it out. We made money from it. And we're like, the first thing we did, instead of continuing to just add products, was like, we have to teach other people how to do this. Like,
I love that you guys are doing that. Yeah. No,
and that's so more fun. It's so much more satisfying when I see people in our course having success than it is even for us. Like, that's a bigger payday than seeing my own bank account grow. It's just so fun. I think that's just how we are as a human race. Like, we love helping and we love sharing. And that is the whole point. It's crazy, like reading books. I am going on such a tangent right now, but you read these old books, and the world used to function with entrepreneurs. I mean, there really wasn't like day jobs. There wasn't 9-to-5 jobs. There wasn't, it was different. Everybody kind of either ran their own farm or had their own business, and that was the way things functioned. So I feel like it's very innate to be an entrepreneur. I think you love creating something your own. You love being accountable to yourself and being the master of your message. So
that's so true.
I just coined that. I like that term.
Yeah.
Use that on some of my other stuff.
Master of your message. I like that.
I do too. Do you guys hear that? Magic was just born here on this interview. That's what happens.
It's cool what happens when you go off on tangents.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's fun when it happens with people who totally get you. So thanks for letting me have my tangent.
Absolutely.
So where can everybody buy the book? Because I'm excited to share that and let everybody go and read it, because it sounds like there's so much more to your story that we could never even share on a podcast episode.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's called Mystery Illness. And it's also on my website, which is ownitandthrive.com.
I love it.
There's a link to it that'll take you right to Amazon too, with the picture of the cover of the book and everything. And it's super easy to get to.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's pretty surreal to see your book for sale somewhere. It's pretty cool feeling. So
that's amazing. I guess I do have my Disneyland book. I was going to say, I kind of feel like I know what that feels like. Oh, yeah, I do.
You do. Yeah.
It's just not really what I think about most of the time now.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny how that happens, too, you know?
It totally is.
Kind of evolve with everything.
Yeah.
It's cool. You're supposed to evolve. We're all supposed to just kind of bend and flow with everything. So.
Exactly. Well, I think you're awesome, and I'm so excited that you've been able to spend some time sharing your experience. I feel like the more times you hear something, the more you really start to believe it. And I think the more times people hear how people are having success doing so many things, it just makes it more possible and makes it feel more doable, no matter where you're at in your progression. So
absolutely. And it's overwhelming, especially when you start, and then all of a sudden you're 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12 months into it, and you're like, oh, wow, I've come so far. And it seems impossible in the beginning, and then it seems impossible halfway through, and then and then you have your highs and your lows, and but in the big picture, you reflect on it, and you're like, "Wow, I've done a lot. This is really cool."
Yeah. So, well, you have done a lot, and you've done a lot of cool things. So I'm excited to keep seeing where it takes you, and seeing what your next steps are, and finding out what your baby is, and all the fun things.
I know. I'm very excited.
I bet you are. You're probably a little more excited than I am, but
yeah, I'm definitely ready. I didn't know.
You survived a summer being pregnant. That's an amazing feat. I've done that before.
In Southern California, both pregnancies, same time. I survived though. I feel lucky to live here, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take the pregnant summers.
You should.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Rochelle, and to everybody else listening, have a marvelous day. I will link to everything. Go check out her book, go check out her website, and just go be inspired by all the stuff that she has created for you guys to be inspired by. So thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys later. I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great day.